Um, well, obviously, thanks for joining.
Thank you, Diego.
So the idea behind this record was to find songs from various cultures and try to examine the indigenous musical elements that are responsible for the impact of each song.
Right.
So when looking at the music for this record, I noticed that there were two fairly consistent musical elements: the way the songs make the listener feel physically and the way that the songs make the listener feel emotionally.
Right.
I thought we could just discuss the importance of those two musical elements in your music, like specifically how a song makes you feel physically and emotionally, and how that translates to listeners.
Right. Sure. Well, uh, growing up in New Orleans,
Mhm.
uh, very lucky, and growing up playing dance music, pop music
Right.
was also it was a very fortunate accidental turn. I mean, jazz music. Well, the beat was the Pentecostal church beat, really,
Mm-hmm.
Pentecostal church beat, and in turn, it becomes the universal dance beat. It's the dance beat. And jazz had that dance beat for a very, very long time. Uh, until it stopped sometime in the 60s, late 60s, and then the
Right.
70s. And then it just became this very different kind of thing where the songs were more about harmony than anything else. And songs were all kind of floaty. And then in the modern time, the dance beat came back, but it's like more of an R&B beat,
Mm-hmm.
with an ostinato bass line and things like that. So I don't really think about how the music makes me feel physically
Mm-hmm.
because I mean the musicians I play with know what the swing beat is,
Right.
and they understand what it is. It's got nothing to do with the ride pattern. It's just this constant pulse, and the pulse. The difference between early jazz and modern jazz is that in early jazz the pulse was external. It was externalized, and by the 50s, by the late 40s, early 50s, it had become internalized. But the difference is that all of the musicians that we know and love from that period, you know, all of the drummers, all of the piano players, they all grew up with the externalized beat.
Right. 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 Right.
So when they played the combo music, when they played the chamber music version of that, if you really listen to the recordings, all of the drummers, for instance, are still playing four on the floor.
Mm-hmm.
It's just not loud. It blends in with the bass. So there's this constant driving pulse. As musicians started to play jazz by studying harmonically and not listening to recordings, they become more and more removed from the sound of the music. So a lot of times when modern drummers play, they don't use the bass drum at all, except for some like explosive, propulsive one or something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Or they play it in between beats. But the idea of the bass drum constantly going, or as they call it, feathering,
Mm-hmm.
going on to support the bass, it's almost it's a lost art. So I don't really have to think about that because anybody that plays in my group is going to do that, or they're not going to be there very long. Um, so what we tend to focus on is the using sound to generate emotion. Certain rules that the old beboppers had, like they'd have these rules that made no sense to me. They would say, well, always start with a fast song, always end with a fast song, always have a ballad.
Right.
And they'd say, well, why? And I'd say, well, you got to break things up. And I get that. It's a showbiz technique. It's been around forever.
Mhm.
But if all of the songs are going to sound the same, what difference does it make?
Right.
I mean, you have to change the color of the sound.
Exactly.
So when the ballad shouldn't sound just like the fast song,
Mhm.
where you play the melody, everything is loud, nobody's listening, you go into a two field and start playing. That's not a ballad. So what we started focusing on was what I call it the magic act. If we just went to an audience and says, okay, this song is going to feel very exciting, and it feels exciting, they're amazed. How did they do that? Okay, this song is going to be very, very sad. Oh my God, how do you do that?
Right.
With sound, I mean, it's like a magic trick.
Right.
You know, this song is going to sound very angry and angsty. Oh, and it did. I mean, oh, it's incredible. They're more excited about that. They like good music, and if the music's good, they'll check it out.
A lot of the songs that were taken, like for instance, there's a song from my wife's culture. My wife is Greek and she's from Thessaloniki, born and raised, and she came to the States. And there's a song called Asteta Malakyasu, which is a song written from the golden age of Greek cinema.
Right.
And this was a song that, my mother-in-law had sang to my wife, and my wife sang to our kids. And so, like any musician, if you get a song rolling around in your head, you're going to go nuts if you don't just play it or try to do something with it. So I decided to do it, and I started with the song. I mean, if you want to say that there's a concept to this record, it's really just songs. The song is the concept.
I'll drink to that.
Cheers. So I performed it kind of reluctantly. I performed it to a Greek audience. I had a gig there. And I think the best compliment that I got was, people recognized it. It wasn't this kind of convoluted, it didn't get the jazz kind of like wash over.
Right.
But I was still able to find a little bit of a landscape, a little bit of a canvas for me to discuss.
Right.
Not even express myself, but mainly just to discuss the content of the song.
Right.
So that got me thinking. I was just like, this song will appeal to jazz musicians or the jazz audience because it sounds like jazz, but it's actually going to appeal more to the Greek community because it has deeper roots in Greek culture.
Right.
And I said, that's the power of song. that song I had witnessed it being played in a little Greek tavern. You know, my in-laws who were born in the 40s, you know, interacted with it. My brother-in-laws, you know, who are around my same age, my nephews who are a little bit younger, and then younger kids, they all seem to interact with it the same way. They don't have this sort of generational obstacle that we have in the U.S. Like, oh, that's my parents' music.
Right.
You know, it kind of transcends that.
Right.
Do you find that we suffer from that generational sort of obstacle here in the U.S.? Is that exclusive to us, or?
In a way, it is. I mean, in a way, it is. It is. You know, we're a culturalist people. I mean, in Brazil, you have many of the same problems that we have here between conservatives and liberals, between, you know, white Brazilians and black Brazilians, the downtrodden, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's certain songs that you play, and right at that moment, they're all Brazilians.
Right.
And this is every country can tell you. There's a song or two songs, or Brazil is probably 10 songs, but
right.
There are songs, and all the fights dissolve. And we don't really have that. We don't have that, you know. Country fans like country music, you know, jazz fans like jazz, R&B guys like R&B. We don't have that one thing that kind of unites us. There's a beat that unites us. I mean, all American music is rural. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's the thing that unites us. But then the rural people move to the city, and then it becomes cityfied. Mm-hmm. But it's still rural. And the city people have contempt for the rural people, and the rural people have contempt for the city people. I think our biggest problem is that we have this obsession with individuality. Mm-hmm. And we don't understand individuality. As a nation, we don't understand individuality. So when we think of it as me as a singular person coming up with a singular idea that will change the world. You know, it's kind of like in political terms, you can see how the progressives are starting to attack Joe Biden as being an old dotard, you know, and we don't have this kind of historical connectivity. Like now I'm 60, I'm an old person. And I've gotten emails from 30-year-olds saying, well, man, you're old. So what do you know? I mean, already. And I never felt that way because of where I grew up. Right. I mean, New Orleans is just one of these places where we love and respect our elders. Mm-hmm. And we call everybody Mr. and Miss. And it's just like a thing. All the old people, you know, my dad would come on stage and people would applaud and loved his presence. All the young musicians wanted to be a part of him. And then I moved and I realized that the rest of the country was not like that. Right. And when I started learning how to play jazz, the old guys told me I sucked and the young guys told me I was great. And my brain said, well, why would I listen to the young guys? The old guys might have a point. Whereas a lot of my young friends say, man, don't listen to them, man. They're old, man. This is our time. It's like the obsession is with our time. Right. And so excellence becomes, it's a shapeshifter. What is excellence? Well, excellence is whatever a million people say it is. And I'm like, no, excellence is kind of just excellence. And that which is popular is not always excellent. As a matter of fact, most times it is not excellent. And then they say, well, you're just a Puritan. I say, okay, I'll if that's what I have to be to say what I just said, yeah, I'll live with that. I'll be a Puritan. So yeah, we have all of these things that other countries don't have. And a lot of people identify with, that's why so many people move here. Mm-hmm. Because a lot of people, they don't want all that traditional stuff. They want to make their mark on the world. America is the place to do that. Mm-hmm. You know, America is the place where you can just come here. And I think that often gets in the way of you have jazz musicians saying they play jazz and they can't play authentically a song from the 40s. Right. You know, they fall in love with Charlie Parker and they start talking about chord changes. Mm-hmm. Bird didn't even know any damn chord changes. Right. He heard it all. So every time he was playing, he was actually playing the song. Right. But the people who came after him, who couldn't play the song, started studying structure. So modern players play structure. And so when they play like Bird, all they can play is those Bird licks that they learn.
Right.
They can't sound like Bird when they play it because he's not doing what they're doing.
Right.
And it's really difficult to get people who think in terms of structure to understand that. So there's a lot of reasons. You know, we don't have a song that can unify us,
Right.
but we do have songs that if you play them, you have songs that older people will respond to.
Mm-hmm.
And younger people will respond to, not realizing, you know, it's like there's a 100-year-old song. If you play it in a certain way, you can get people to like it.
Right.
That's kind of what you're doing.
Yeah.
I can tell what you're doing is you're taking, like, the most important part of the song is actually the song itself,
Right.
and not some harmonic device that you've written to dramatically alter the effect of the melody. Because usually when songs are written and performed, the people who wrote the song or the culture that created the song, they bounced around and decided that this is the sequence that makes the melody sing the best. And then we show up and say, no, but you could use this, you could use that. You could just take a flat 5 and substitute it for this. Yeah, but not with the melody.
Right.
So then you become an entire generation of people who think that structure is more important than melody. So they play the melody almost indifferently so they can get to the form and say, what'd you think about my solo? The whole thing is kind of dysfunctional. So again, I applaud you.